3D integration between StyleCAD and VStitcher. Here we have the patterns for a hooded sweatshirt. There are two methods of including or excluding patterns in 3D. One way is to use the right-click menu inside a pattern, go to 3D settings, and choose the commands Include selected patterns in 3D or Exclude selected patterns from 3D. The other method is to use the 3D quick step, where you type 3D and select the pattern pieces to include or exclude. Notice how when the patterns are excluded from 3D, the pieces turn hollow inside, while when they are included in 3D, the pieces are filled in with color. Let's load these patterns in VStitcher. Here we have another style already open in VStitcher. We go to Plugins, StyleCAD plugin, and choose the command Clear Loaded Style. Now we can load these new patterns in VStitcher. We're going to include some internal lines in 3D. We select the internal line 3D property tool and select the internal lines that we want to include. Notice how the internal lines turn blue. If we were to select the internal lines again, the lines would become excluded from 3D and they would turn back to black in color. Now when we load the style again in VStitcher, the internal lines are there. Stitching can be done in both StyleCAD and VStitcher. Here we do some stitching in VStitcher. Next, let's send the stitching information to StyleCAD. We go to Plugins, StyleCAD plugin, and select the command Sync VStitch data with StyleCAD. Now all the stitching data from VStitcher is synchronized with StyleCAD. Let's finish stitching in StyleCAD. It is important to note that when we select multiple sections to a single section, we always go from the multiple section side to the single section side. Also, when stitching patterns to internal lines, there may be a need to reverse some stitchings. Another feature of StyleCAD is the ability to stitch multiple sections to multiple sections. We first accumulate the multiple sections of one side with the Shift key down, then right-click on the workspace and select Begin Other Side Selection. Then, with the Shift key still down, we select the multiple sections of the other side. Notice how the selected sections of one side is in red, and the selected sections of the other side is in blue. Now we drag from the red side to the blue side to stitch them together. The sections are proportionately divided to match the other side. When we simulate the hooded sweatshirt in 3D, we want the hood to have a bunched up look. For this, we select the internal line 3D property tool and right-click on the internal line to bring up the internal line property window. Under 3D settings, we select shrink and type the percentage of shrinkage we want. We continue to do this for all the internal lines that will be affected. Next, we place the patterns in the proper clusters in the arrangement mode. Here we use the quick step method to assign the clusters. Notice how we place the pocket pattern in a separate front torso cluster. By placing the pocket pattern in its own front torso subcluster, we can control it separately from the other front torso cluster. We're done with the arrangement, so let's load the patterns again in VStitcher. Here we see all the stitching data from StyleCAD synchronized with VStitcher. In order for a better simulation, we adjust the placement of the patterns on the avatar by moving the blue dot in each cluster. Here, the pocket pattern is shown in its separate subcluster in VStitcher. See how we were able to pull it out and control it separately from the front torso cluster because we placed it in its own subcluster. Now we designate layer assignment for the pocket and hoodband patterns so that they are placed on top of the other patterns. Since the default layer for all the patterns is 2, we place the pocket and hoodbands in layer 3. In order to demonstrate layer dressing, let's disable the hoodbands before our first simulation. We select the patterns and choose the command "Don't use selected." Then we simulate. Notice how the hood looks bunched up because of the shrinkage we added. We then enable the hoodbands by selecting them and choosing the command "Use selected." Then we resimulate to sew the hoodbands over the hood. As shown in this video, there is a high level of 2D, 3D integration between StyleCAD and VStitcher. We continue to push the boundaries of 2D, 3D integration